What's up, guys? Welcome to Quirks, episode 10.
Episode 10.
Today's
we made it.
Yeah, we did make it to 10. It's amazing. Today's topic is
cheers.
Yes, cheers.
Double digits.
Right? 10.
Today's topic is if I had known, and essentially it's Profi and I, the old guys, talking about things we may have done differently if we had known better.
If we had known better.
So yeah,
It's not just us, though, right? I think Cody's probably got a couple things.
I've got a couple things that I would do if I were to talk to my younger self. I would tell myself, give me a little heads up.
Right.
Her younger self is like, well, when I was 12, I definitely would have done this differently.
Definitely.
Well, we got the weekly weigh-in here, and I weighed myself a couple days ago. I'm down to 210, which it's great because it seems like what I'm doing is actually starting to work. I mean, I know that I was sort of hovering for a while. I've been getting up a lot earlier now and doing boot camp at about 4. I get up at 4:30, and then I go to boot camp at the 6 o'clock class. And I think that if you just get up earlier, just kickstarts your metabolism a little earlier. You're burning more calories because you're just up. So I mean, something's working. It's great. If I dip below 200, that'll be the major milestone for me. So hopefully I'm on my way.
You'll get there.
That'd be huge.
Yeah.
You'll get there.
So
Yeah.
Slowly
it's
but
working.
surely.
You're making progress every time, it seems now. So you're back on track.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I gotta watch what I eat still. Last night we had my birthday party, so I pigged out a little bit.
That was a
but-
ton of fun.
Yeah.
I saw it.
And
I was
Profi
watching you
beamed in from
guys.
San Francisco. Like, we have the technology to do the podcast with him in the room, so we put him up on the television, and he hung out at the party last night. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was interesting. I got to actually meet some people, some friends of yours that I've heard about for a long time and never met, never seen. So
yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, and then when we didn't like what Profi said, we just clicked the end call button, and he was gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually,
I
you
noticed
just
that
logged off. You
music-
kind of
the
just
music would get
disappeared.
louder. I noticed the music would get louder.
I wish
over
sometimes
time.
that
Like,
would
oh,
work
he's
for
talking.
people who were
Oh.
actually there, you know?
Well, you could just turn the call button
You
off
just
and then
turn the call button,
disappear.
they just leave the room.
Uh,
New
Yeah, at one
invention.
point I did leave. I did. I think I told Kevin I was going to. I just had my mother's been visiting.
Oh, that's right.
Southern California, and I had a bunch of stuff going on, so I just I needed to close up stuff in the studio. So, but it was fun. I was there for a little while. I came in 2 or 3 times and got to see the party progress. It seemed like you had some good crowd.
It's
in and out.
interesting. You know, I haven't lived in Portland. I've lived in Portland for under a year now. But I have a lot of friends who lived in California who moved to Portland, so I have a few people that I can hang out with here from some old friends.
Mostly all dudes.
It was a huge
It was a
sausage
sausage
fest last
fest.
night. Yeah,
Naomi and I were
so
the
you
only
loved it, Cody?
I
mean,
loved
you're
it.
the yeah.
It was great.
You know what's funny is Naomi actually brought it up. She's like, "Wow, that's a huge sausage fest." I'm like, "Well, honey, you need to meet some girlfriends so you can like bring them over. It's not, I got guy friends. We talk about gear and nerdy shit. So, Cody, bring girls over next. Don't you know any girls? Bring some
I know
girls.
a
next
lot
time.
of girls.
Oh,
but
okay. Well,
Bring
no,
lots
I
of
want you
girls,
guys
great.
to meet.
I know she's like none that I'm gonna bring
I
around
protect
you,
them.
fucking degenerates.
Oh, come on, be fair now. Let us meet all your friends. Come on.
Boy. Oh,
No,
boy,
you
oh,
know what
boy,
she
oh, boy.
does? She
I'll come
comes
up
and
there
she
for
gets
that show.
numbers of all the fucking like guys she likes at my party. I think she went home with a couple phone numbers last night.
Sure did. But that's
Really?
because they want I opened a massage therapy practice and they want massage.
Oh yeah. I'm sure they
right,
do.
with a happy ending.
How about his next door neighbor? Was that one of the numbers you got?
The next
No,
door
that
neighbor-
was not
Upstairs
last night.
guy or
Yeah.
whatever?
Oh my god, he took me to Cirque du Soleil and it was fucking amazing. It was the funnest thing I've ever. It was the most incredible thing. I cried. It was so fucking
Wait.
fun.
The guy that lives upstairs?
He took me to Cirque du Soleil.
Really?
Yeah, that's pretty.
I don't know. I don't think we told anyone this story.
No, we haven't.
So what happened is I was for some reason just very dazed, and I ended up walking up a whole completely different floor and walking right into someone else's apartment, and I looked in. And I'm like, everything looks so different. Like, it's a fucking disaster in here. And it was really dark. And I'm like, they didn't even set up. Like, what the fuck are they doing in there?
She's on floor 4.
I'm on floor 4.
Like walking into the apartment thinking that it's my apartment.
And I turn to the left and I see this dude playing video games. And I like start laughing. And he like gets up, takes his headphones off like really quickly. And is like, do you need something? Like, do you need help finding something? And I'm like, just start laughing. I'm like, why the fuck does my key work for your door, dude? Like, that's a fucking issue. And
you
he's
use our key to get
I
in his
used your
apartment?
key.
That's a problem.
Right, I know. I've been
Wow.
Okay,
complaining
whoa!
about
I didn't know this part of the story.
I never heard about that.
His,
Holy
his door might have been
shit.
unlocked. Who knows?
Okay,
But anyways,
okay.
we ended up hanging out, and he took me to Cirque du Soleil.
My God, the guy upstairs can
Cody's
get
a
into my apartment.
player.
Yeah,
I'm not a
she
player.
is. She's a little horn dog.
No,
Randomly
I'm just
walks
nice.
into guys' apartments, ends up on dates, rolls into your party, ends up with a ton of numbers. Like, you're kind of
Dude, we
working it.
can't give her a hard time though. We were both the same way when we were in our 20s. I mean, come on.
It's not criticism. It's just observation.
I'm not using these people like tissues. I'm making friends.
Friends.
You're making as many
connections.
friends as you could stuff in a box of tissues.
Wow.
Lots of
Cody, we're
friends,
just
girl.
fucking with you.
Wow.
You know what? Like, you have a good time. You do it. You do you.
I'm having a ball.
No one's judging you.
And if you
Him
don't
and
do all
I,
this
of
shit,
all
then in
people,
10
can't
years,
judge anybody. So you do
you don't-
you.
If you don't do all this shit, then in 10 years we can't have this same show and listen to your long list of mistakes.
Right.
Right.
None of these
Right.
are mistakes.
No, not yet.
Anyways, enough about my fucking life. Give me some news.
All right, we got some news. Do it.
All right, I got some news. Okay. I don't know if this is a huge thing up there or how much you guys have heard about this, but a pretty common thing down here in the Bay Area has been this sort of standing desk thing. And where this started is apparently some studies have come out over the last few years that said sitting was hugely dangerous for you if you did it all the time. And so, especially in tech companies and other places like that, everybody started to get standing desks. You go around these places, everyone's standing, and this became sort of a new health thing, right? So as one can almost anticipate these days, because this always seems to happen, suddenly a bunch of studies come out that say the opposite is true. Apparently, standing all the time is as unhealthy as smoking cigarettes daily.
Wow.
They did a study with 7,000 participants
Kevin, will
in
you bring this
Ontario,
up?
Canada. It was within a 12-year period. And the people who stood at work were nearly twice as likely to develop heart disease compared to those who
Yeah,
typically
you can make that full
sat
screen. Hold on.
through their shifts.
There we go.
And I thought that was pretty bizarre. Pretty counterintuitive,
It's crazy.
especially given what we've heard. I think the numbers were, it said, let's see, the incidence of heart disease among those respondents who stood a lot at work, 6.6%, was similar to the incidence of heart disease among workers who smoked on a daily basis,
Wow.
or those who were obese.
Is this taking into account if any of these people like have a regular exercise regimen that goes with it?
I think
mean,
it does. I've definitely heard in the past that it doesn't matter how much you fucking work out. Like, the fact that you're just sitting in that position for so long is just doing so much harm to your body.
Thanks, Kev.
Yeah, I'd heard that sitting puts strain on certain organs and other things like that. Apparently standing does it as well. I mean, I guess what this is kind of saying is that and this is kind of a quote, I think the simple message is sit less, move more, move frequently.
Right.
So I guess just standing all the time, just sitting all the time, these aren't the end all be all of health. You need to move around, you need to do stuff, you need to not be stationary.
Right.
But this one kind of stood out just because it's one of those situations in life where the conventional wisdom has now completely flipped.
Right. Right.
So
Well, it tells you all these things, but the way that we're inventing things and all these new services, they're just making it so easy to just bring everything to us.
Right. Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
It's
like
like
Amazon.
so easy to be lazy now.
Amazon delivers everything to you, so it's definitely like the way that technology has evolved is definitely not helping us to move more.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and as a culture, it seems to me that we've always, or at least for a very long time, been a sort of couch potato culture, right? Everybody, no matter what social bracket, income bracket they're in America, has got a big TV, a ridiculous cable package, a big sofa, and orders pizza a lot.
Right.
That seems to be a really common part of our culture. And as we automate more and more, this is just becoming a bigger problem. Now, this is more focused on work. But I think the rules here probably apply no matter. It's just the way you move and the way you live.
I've actually been wanting to get myself a motorized desk. I saw them at an office place not too long ago, so that I don't spend as much time sitting down. Like if I'm in front of a computer for 12 hours a day. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes more. And I sit or lay down when I'm doing it, and I, of course, wanting to be healthier, have thought about just getting it, because they can hold about 500 pounds. The motors in them will actually lift 500 pounds, so that would work out for this setup here. So I'm thinking about actually moving to an entirely, at least potentially elevated setup. It could go up or down, so if I want to sit, I can. But I'm going to do that soon, I think.
The standing for me was actually kind of a cool thing at work because I have some lower back issues, and part of, I think, what helped spawn it, other than an accident and some other stuff, just over life, being a musician, sitting at these desks like you have, Scott, I would just be leaning over stuff, using a mouse, in a really bad sort of posture. And so my posture has been very poor just from sitting doing studio work for hours and hours and hours. And when you stand, it forces a lot of your body, at least, to be very straight. And that part I found relief in.
Right.
But again, the key thing is we got to move around. I don't think we're meant to just stand and just sit and just do all these things. And it's just, I don't know. I just kind of love this sort of stuff because there's so many things that have been conventional wisdom, and they completely change, it seems, every few years. At one point, our health food pyramid is like carbs are good, proteins, fat's bad. Now it's fat's good, carbs are bad. It's like it seems every little while the whole paradigm shifts, and every health person is totally behind the new thing. So I think maybe the greater lesson in life, to get a little bit philosophical about it, is again moderation and maybe flowing with things humans have always done. Not doing these extreme diets, these extreme shifts is probably the safest bet, because everything always changes. You know what I mean? And just kind of being moderate seems to expose you to less folly on the wings of these sort of things.
In my experience, finding balance in all things has always brought me more happiness, strangely enough.
Yeah. I think so.
All
right.
That was the first one I saw. The second one, which I think maybe has a little more levity. Once again, Anthony Weiner is in the news.
Anthony Weiner.
I don't know how much you guys have been following him, but he's been involved in sexting problems. His wife was he was a congressman, I believe. His a big Democratic senator, I don't know if it's senator or representative, it's been a while, but the main thing here is his wife was a big, he was like Hillary Clinton's main confidant, and worked with her. And this stuff coming out for like the second time or third time in his career was part of the problems she had at the very end. It was a big controversy.
Thanks, Kev.
When the FBI came out and said they were reopening part of an investigation into her right before the election, like days before the election, it was about this guy's emails, right? So all of this guy has been a big freaking problem because he just can't stop sexting. And what he does is, he had this wife, he had this life, he had all this stuff, but he likes to text random girls online, and he likes to
photos
of his junk, right? His bare chest, and one of them had his baby in the background, like just kind of stupid.
Yeah, that's pretty gross,
right?
That's pretty.
The guy's a fucking idiot. I don't know. I'm not going to comment on his sexual proclivities or anything, but he's fucking stupid. Like the amount of problems he's had here.
Yeah, this is it's habitual.
When do you not? When you
this
learn?
Is a 15-year-old. So now.
Did he know she was 15 though? I mean, do you know what I mean?
I mean, I'm sure.
I don't know, but
what
he's sentenced.
We're
to
saying
2
I mean
years
a lot,
of
but what I
prison.
actually mean by that is, did they set it was as a setup? Did he know he was texting a minor? I mean, that's
does
anyone know?
They clearly feel he knew enough because he got sentenced to 2 years in prison, and the charge was transferring obscene material to a minor.
Okay.
And he got off pretty well because it could have been 10 years.
Yeah, well.
Jesus Christ.
So, yeah, and he's going to pay a fine. And
his name doesn't help him at all, that's for sure.
Right.
That's an unfortunate twist of events for him.
But I mean, no one would know about his name if he wasn't just such a shithead.
Right. Well, he's living up to it, that's for sure.
And the girl was talking about his rape fantasies and all sorts of different stuff. It's just, if you read into it, it goes on and on and on. But he's just a fucking idiot. And he might actually be part of the reason why we have a President Trump because of this.
Right.
It goes to show that you should probably not be sending pictures of your junk to random people online because it could change the politics and potential nuclear wars of the entire planet.
That's so strange to
More
think
like
about.
Paula dick pics.
Paula Dick. He's a Paula Diction. Whatever. All right, let's move on.
You tried.
I tried.
So
It seemed good in my head, and then when it came out of my mouth, I was like, no, shut up.
It's kind of like him probably with this fucking girl.
Right.
Yeah, I guess the overall lesson to close that one up is if you're going to send pictures like that around the internet, just make sure it's not a minor. I mean, come on.
Or that they want it too, like especially not a minor, but also if they want it.
Yeah. I don't know. I've done a lot of stupid things in my life, and I probably have my own perversions and stuff like anybody else does. But this guy, I mean, I can't get past the stupidity.
You know?
It's reoccurring is the problem. It's not just a one-time thing. It just seems to be like this reoccurring theme.
Right.
You know?
He was probably smuggling a cell phone up his ass.
Who knows what he did before he was
sorry,
I didn't but who knows what he did before he was even a congressman? It's just like it just seems like he's
I don't know.
He's got a problem. He's like has a sex addiction. All right, let's move on. Let's move on from wieners.
All right.
Wiener.
On from wieners. Okay, this one's kind of interesting, especially because this was all going on during the same week that we were supposedly going to be seeing the end of the world.
Right.
Which, as we know, was like a week or two ago, right? There's another prophecy, and it was going to happen, and then of course it didn't because it never does.
Right.
But during that week, and I had thought originally when I kind of glanced over some articles related to this during that time period, that this was actually related to that prophecy, but it's actually a little bit different. It might have been timed because of it,
right?
But the content of this message was a little different. So basically, to kind of back up a little, in Orange County, California,
will you bring this up, Kev?
On television, an emergency broadcast system triggered. And so this is something that comes up. If you're not familiar with it, I'm guessing most parts of the country have it. But anyway, what happens is this comes up, it beeps for a while, and then it presents a message, right? And usually they do this as a test every now and then to make sure that the system's active.
Right.
You know, nuclear war or natural disaster or whatever. It's something that will interrupt all of the broadcast channels. And this message came up across Orange County, California, and broadcasted some really strange stuff. And what the stuff ended up being, actually, they figured out what it came from, but it was two things. One was a clip from the show Coast to Coast Radio.
Oh, Art Bell.
Right? And it was some guy freaking out, clearly about some weird alien stuff, right? And he's just babbling, and it's really trippy. And then there was another clip that was some sort of clip from like a televangelist sermon. Huh. So there's sort of like,
should we play the clip?
Sort of thing. Yeah, the clip is the one I think from Art Bell.
Let's I'm going to bring this up and we'll do this. Hold on. Give me 1 second here. All right. Let's see what this sounds like.
You have to turn the sound on.
Oh, sorry about that. Sometimes my YouTube's down. All right, here we go.
Infiltrated a lot of aspects of the military establishment, particularly the Area 51.
Don't put the fucking face up there.
The military, I'm sorry, the government knows about them. I started getting.
That's fucking spooky.
Yeah, that
right.
is
So imagine
strange.
you're some housewife in Orange County, you know, doing whatever, and this goes beaming through your kitchen or living room or wherever you have your TV. Like, what the hell do you start thinking? Especially if you don't know what the hell's going on. Right here, we know kind of what's happening, but that is bizarre.
Right.
I would lose my shit, especially late at night.
I heard that, and I didn't realize that was from Art Bell. I've heard that before. I've actually heard that before. I mean, it was creepy on Art Bell, but it's not as creepy now that I know it's just a repeat from Art Bell. So
imagine back in the day, and this is an experience that many of us may have had, you know, where kind of high on some interesting psychedelic or something with a bunch of friends hanging out and the TV's on. Imagine this suddenly blasting through while you're totally trashed.
Oh yeah, I'd
That
flip
could
out.
just mess
I'd admit
with your
myself
reality.
to any place I could. That would
Right.
tire
Wow.
me.
Yeah, that'd be weird.
So the interesting thing here is, how did this happen, right? The likely answer is that somebody obviously broke into the system and hacked it.
Right.
But besides the weirdness of something like this happen, that actually creates some really scary questions, because if someone can break into the emergency broadcast system, think about how that could be abused, the kind of
for
damage
sure.
that could create, the kind of panic that could happen if that was used maliciously.
It seems like the
that's a
whole
big
hacker
problem.
culture has really become very prevalent lately.
It's kind of like yelling fire in a crowded movie theater in a way.
What do you mean?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Like setting panic.
Oh yeah.
You know?
But what I was saying was that like it seems like hackers have a lot more control over a lot more things than they used to. Does anyone notice that? It feels like I'm always reading something about hackers hacked. What was the credit score? Equifax. I mean, everything's getting hacked. Like HBO got hacked, and all the Game of Thrones scripts were really.
They're just
I
getting
mean,
better.
it just seems like it's really happening quite a bit lately. Hackers have
it's
been
kind of
very
it's kind of a weird thing, and I think there's a good part of this and there's a bad part of this. There's a bad part of this because if people can take control of stuff and there's no control over the information or the repercussions, it can affect people, and that's bad.
right.
The other side of this, though, and I think I'm guessing what might inspire this just based off people I've known who are involved with this kind of stuff.
Camera.
We have a government.
Camera.
We have a government.
Camera.
Whoops.
You're playing hide and seek.
Ugh.
Oh, there we go. Oh, it went for a second.
We're killing
We have
it.
I'm gonna keep just making my point here, but we have What are you laughing
Your
at now?
fucking menu's up.
Yeah, sorry, audience. We're working on some new technical things with the show.
Oh, we.
It's always a work in progress here.
Is it gone now?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
We should just edit this part out and rewind.
You
part
just
of
got you
this.
just got hacked.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
just got hacked.
All right. What my point was, though, with this kind of thing, we have a society and a government, and that is constantly looking into our stuff. Everything's interconnected and whatnot. And I think a lot of people are motivated by this to learn how to break into various systems because they don't like the idea that there's outside control. That if there's room for manipulation from the outside and we don't have the ability to access sort of these mechanisms that dominate our society, that's a dangerous thing. I think it's become kind of a competition for a lot of hackers just to
Right.
figure out what it is they can take over. Because if they can't, then those that own it, who knows what could happen there. It's like a
I
balance
agree.
of
I think
power
hacker
thing,
culture is
you know?
amazing. I think that I think it has to exist. You would just hope that you would hope that the people who are the best at it would have decent intentions. I mean, that's not, of course, not always the case. I mean, there's a lot of financial hacks and people who are people's pensions or people's bank accounts, old people's bank accounts who have very little. People are stealing from people like that. I hope that there's a faction out there somewhere who are very, very good at what they do, who are able to keep the power balance in check.
The vigilantes.
That's
of the hacker
my hope.
culture.
That is my hope, at least.
Yeah. The problem is that who keeps them in check? It's like there's always these struggling entities, like the struggle of power between entities, right? And it's like, who do you
Right.
trust? I think it's good that control is spread out. Unfortunately, it's becoming harder and harder to discern who is trustworthy.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a weird thing, but in this particular case, though, with this emergency alert system, I don't feel comfortable that hackers have hacked into it, because if they have, then other forces have with their own hackers or whatever. The point is that if you are not a legitimate person and you are accessing these systems, you can create panic or make this a regular thing. And if this hack is regular, what happens when a real disaster happens and they attempt to use this system?
Yeah, it's like the Cry Wolf
and no
story.
one believes
no
it.
one believes it anymore. Right.
Exactly. So it's dangerous, but it's pretty funny though in this case. So
yeah.
Anyway, the next thing. So this is a really, really cool one. It looks like that there has been an antibody created that kills 99% of HIV strains.
Yes.
This is
And this
huge.
is not preventative. This isn't a vaccine. This actually is post. Like if you have full blown AIDS, like this is.
It seems to kill it. And now the thing
Wow.
about HIV that's been really tricky is that it mutates a lot, right?
Right,
so
right,
anytime they would figure out a way to knock out a particular variant of it, or to break into that, all the mutations would keep everyone chasing. Like you could never really catch it. It would just change. And none of the approaches seem to work on all of them.
Right.
This one, apparently, because of the way that it's set up, apparently will work on most of them. Like it seems to not be affected by this shifting change.
Right.
And that's an extremely big deal. They're saying it's really early. They're hoping the trials get off the ground in 2018. I believe that they were doing this test in mice,
Right.
or something like that.
You know they have a vaccine.
Or actually it says tested on monkeys.
Right.
So it's actually further than mice.
Do you guys know that there's a vaccine? So I have a couple
I
of
don't.
very gay friends from they came to visit us from San Francisco, and we got into the conversation about how do you protect yourself from when you're very active, and they told us that they take these pills once a day and they don't have to worry about it anymore.
A pill a day, though? Can't you get just shot or something? Isn't the vaccine supposed to be a shot?
I don't know. I don't know if they told me that it was a pill or if it was a shot. But I do know that like pretty much now the entire gay community takes these preventative. If you don't, it doesn't help when you have but it helps to prevent HIV.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty much like the de facto standard now in the gay community from what I understand.
Actually, now that
I wonder what that pill is. I don't think it's a vaccine though, because that's not how a vaccine works. You
Right.
wouldn't take it
I'm
every day.
probably slaughtering like the concept of it, but they told me that they take daily
a preventative
thing. preventative medicine
measure.
Yeah.
Well,
Which
that's
it's still pretty
cool.
cool.
I mean,
yeah. And
it's
it's cool to see
probably-
that people who have AIDS, like this might be
Who already have HIV.
yeah, like they might not die from it. So that's pretty cool.
I mean, in the West, people don't tend to die from it that often anymore.
Right.
We have a lot of medicines that keep people alive. They're expensive and there's lots of problems with it. It's obviously not ideal, but the majority of people who have full-blown AIDS that are dealing with it apparently are in sub-Saharan Africa.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But
And they
there's-
deserve medicine too, so let's hope this makes it out there.
Yeah, it's estimated that 36.7 million people across the world have it.
Nice.
Wow.
That's a huge deal. So this breakthrough could be a big thing for them.
Cool.
Hell
So
yeah.
I hope it's true. The last one, and this one's a little weird. I've been maybe not weird, a little disappointing, but I'm not totally surprised. But the government is tinkering apparently with copyright. As a musician, this really resonates with me because trying to protect your work and all of the mechanisms of doing that, trying to get paid, like all these different associations you can become part of, and this and that, it can get very confusing. At least before, as far as copyright, you would submit your music or whatever, and it seemed pretty straightforward. But now they're trying to modernize everything. And it seems like part of this, it's called the, Transparency in Music Licensing Act. And there's a lot of information here. I recommend that anybody who's close to this really look it up, because I'll probably slaughter it if I get too detailed about it. But what it amounts to is that without agreement from like ASCAP and BMI and everybody, it's not like everybody got together to solve the problem, but our government seems to be trying to solve the problem with its own mechanism. And it might involve a situation where while you might have copyright on your works, like old works, things that you've already created, your ability to defend that copyright might be seriously compromised if you don't actually enter your works into
this new system
that they're creating.
Right.
Yeah. So this is just
I read this
terrifying.
too, and it's a mess.
Right. And let's face it, musicians not always the best at reading legal documents, not always the best at understanding like the nuances of law and these kinds of things. This is scary, right? Who's going to explain what this means to everyone? I was reading through this and it looked a little bit complicated to me. I don't know right now if I have to go back through the music I've already submitted and now look for this database. I don't know if how this impacts things like being a member of BMI or ASCAP or any of that. There's a lot of unknowns, but they're tinkering with something. And I think I wanted to address this kind of as a warning to anybody who's listening. Check in on this bill. It's the details here. It's the Transparency in Music Licensing and Ownership Act. And I'm trying to look. Oh, it's called HR 3350. I would recommend that you look into it. It's sponsored by Representatives Jim Sensenbrenner, a Republican, and Susan Delbini, I think, who's a Democrat. And it's a little worrisome. I've read some stuff that's concerning. It could affect you.
The problem is that musicians will not. Like you said, the people who are creative are not thinking about the legalities of what they do. That's where I think I hope that there's not some ruthless plot to sort of take advantage of that fact, but I don't know that I trust anybody anymore, especially people who are politicians. Like they almost expect you to not read the fine print so that they can take advantage of you. That seems to be like the reoccurring theme in politics is they make things so complicated that the average person can't follow along. I hope this is not another one of those for nefarious purposes.
Well, this is kind of part of the problem here, because one thing that's brought up, as example in the article, is that there are many ways that people have found to screw people over who own copyright. There's people out there who've gotten people's checks from BMI and ASCAP to go to different addresses and to siphon off monies that artists are owed, and artists don't even know it's happening because they don't even understand how to track it down. There's a lot of problems here. I think a quote here in relation to it is, how is an artist supposed to register every album on which one of her songs has been recorded, including recordings by other artists they might not even know about? If these requirements are time-consuming and uncertain for successful and well-known songwriters and publishers, they will be impossible for independent songwriters.
Right.
So it sounds like they're putting the onus on the content creators to navigate the legal aspects of this. Something that would be simple for like a Spotify or Apple to do, but as an artist would be very complex.
Right.
It's totally fraught with the ability for people, if you don't put your stuff here, and you can't defend your copyrights correctly anymore, someone could, as a third party, slide in and probably find a way to make to take the income that's being generated off of your work without you knowing, or even being able potentially to defend against it. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
This just makes me so super happy to hear this. Super happy.
Yeah, it's a mess.
People suck.
It's a big mess.
People suck.
Yeah. So again, if you're an artist or just interested, read up on it. Read up on that bill. Read up on everything about it. If you have any questions about it, or if you want to do something about it, if you're not comfortable with what this bill says, contact your representatives. This is something real, and the government tends to really fuck this kind of stuff up. Even if they think they're making it better, even if they're not trying to hose you, unfortunately, they usually seem very influenced by industries that are.
Right.
And so I definitely have some concerns.
So do I. It sounds like a mess.
So on that bright and cheery note about artistry and music, let's go on to our music.
All right. Well, I
Section.
have a few things today. I read this article, and this is of course not surprising to me, but I was just looking up creativity. I think that our last episode we talked about genius and creativity and stuff. And Kevin, will you bring this up? Being busy is killing our ability to think creatively.
I agree.
And I'm just going to paraphrase this, but essentially it talks about people who are just fraught with things to do. Don't have it tends to degrade your ability to come up with creative things. So people who are taking more rest, who are daydreamers, staring off into the distance, to paraphrase, are tend to come up with better creative ideas. You can obviously look this article up yourself. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but let's talk about that really quickly. I spend a lot of time daydreaming because I get to do what I do for a living. Now, obviously, it ebbs and flows in terms of money, but I've always been grateful for my ability to. I haven't had a day job for a while, and I think that as a creative person, just having the freedom to not be, again, fraught with just mundane day-to-day things, especially having to get up in the morning, go to a job, deal with the company's problems, problem solve for them. You come home, you probably don't have a lot of energy left to do the things that you would do as a creative person.
Nope, none.
Profi, I
Sucks.
mean, yeah. So I want to hear you both of your input on this.
Oh man, we've lived together on occasion. And you know the kind of stresses that I would bring home from my job. I live, and this is my choice, so I'm not whining, but I live in San Francisco. It's expensive. It's challenging to exist here. And so, like I think most people, I have a corporate job, it pays the bills. It's a good job. I'm not complaining about any of that, but I am a musician. I am an artist, as you know. And it's really hard to make the transition from that way of thinking to bring home the experiences that you're having at work and then go into a studio and be creative. It's hard to even have healthy friendships sometimes, because you get so lost in the stress of what you're doing. And the creative act is so dependent on not being distracted by those kinds of things. It's about, like we've talked about in previous shows, sort of channeling that from the beyond or from within you or whatever you want to term it. So it's been a big problem for me because ever since I've, I guess, grown up and gotten big boy jobs and blah, 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 my music output has gone way down, and it's much, much harder to do. And that puts, it takes a big toll on me because that's what I live for.
Yeah. What about you, Cody?
Straight out.
I've definitely done a lot of research on like when the best time to even on myself, like when I'm at my most creative, and it tends to be like first thing in the morning, or like there's this thing called like the wolf hour, which is, I guess, if you have like a normal sleep schedule, like 4 a.m, if you wake yourself up and you are kind of still in that hazy dream state, you'll be at your most creative and just be able to free flow ideas. Or even if you're taking a nap, you have to get 90 minutes of rest.
Wouldn't that be a meditative state somewhat? It's the in between
a way of a
sleep
meditative
and
state.
an awake state.
It's at a different brainwave, and that's when you kind of get that. And I kind of agree with this because there are times where I'm trying to like bring something out of myself, like some type of creative idea, and it just comes to me at a different situation. Like if I distract myself with something, if I'm just not simply focusing on it, and then I go do something else, it'll come to me what I need
right
at a certain time. So I understand like using distraction, but I don't think being overwhelmed with like a job that drains you is boosting your creativity at all.
Not conducive to creativity. But anyway, this article just talks about that, and everyone can concur that that is the case.
Absolutely.
Moving on, has anyone here heard of Reggie Watts?
Absolutely.
Familiar.
Okay,
He's awesome.
All right. For the have you read you once? Okay.
sounds familiar.
So Kevin, we're gonna do a picture in picture here. I'm gonna play. Okay, so this is an older video. I'm just like enamored with this guy. Like he's absolutely just brilliant and weird. And this was his talk at TED a few years back. I'm gonna bring this up.
I think I've seen this. This is great.
It's pretty good. I'm just gonna play a few minutes of it here. Turn that down a bit. This is fantastic. He's just one of my favorite people. I want to hang out with him one day.
sono io tu
Oh yeah.
fi
Oh
sono
my
che
God,
tu
yeah.
mi scegli to snajation me tono io tra mio sono tu toro io trovesce non ricondi ci maria io sono io tiro voce di sera e devo trovare voce di idee tutto male era su e traveggio
I love him. I love his hair.
me una polomo i farà congiu e sana concela levance non sei
No idea.
Right.
des fois on peut voir
I love how he goes from language to language just like seamlessly.
mais quand tu es fâché avec quelqu'un, c'est for the first time. And that's one of the things that I enjoy most about
I love him. I love
this
him.
convention. It's not so much as so little as to do with what everything is. But it is within our self-interest to understand the topography of our lives unto ourselves.
He needs to narrate Planet Earth.
Oh my god, I love him.
Sucking voice.
He's
The
all
future
about
states
disorientation.
that
That's what I love
There
about him.
is no time other than the collapsation of that sensation of the mirror of the memories in which we are living. Common knowledge, but important nonetheless.
I love him.
As we face fear in these times, and fear is all around us, we also have anti-fear. It's hard to imagine or measure. The background radiation is simply too static to be able to be seen under the normal spectral analysis. But we feel as though there are times when a lot of us,
Oh, love
you know
it.
what I'm saying? But like, you know what I'm saying? Because like, as a hip hop thing, you know what I'm saying? Like Ted be rocking, you know what I'm saying? So like, so I wrote a song, and I hope you guys dig it. It's a song about people and Sasquatches, other French science stuff. That's French science. Okay.
Like you gotta have the kind of mind you gotta have to be able to do this, man.
Yeah.
It's just like
I'm been trying.
he's got a great voice too.
I love the music he does.
Yeah, me too.
But every time it gets me here, I'll say that there is nothing to say.
Oh, so low.
Dude, he's got a great voice. He's actually like really talented.
What is this talk even on?
It's nothing actually.
It's just his name. There's no fucking title. Just Reggie
He's
Wong.
here to disorient you. It's about disorientation.
It's me daily.
So he uses a looper and he just like basically beatboxes and builds a song out of it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
He's so good.
Yeah.
I've been trying to be the one that you believe in. And every moment I wanna be so safe. And every one I want to show you
I like him.
Isn't he great?
I'm gonna look this. I'm gonna see this. Really
Everything he does is fucking awesome.
He was German born.
Is it? Yeah. He lived in Montana apparently when he was younger.
Oh.
Isn't he awesome? So, anyway, I just look up Reggie Watts. Like everything he does is fucking awesome.
I
He actually
like
just lost
him.
55 pounds recently, and he's just rocking it. Like he's
your
fucking
idol now.
I know he's actually kind of my idol lately because he's smart
Dropping
and fucking,
pounds
yeah,
and dropping
pounds.
beats.
Anyway,
Cody, you said that he was born in Germany, and Scott, you said he grew up a bit in Montana. Was he a military kid? Is that
I
what
don't know.
have brought him back and forth like
I
that?
really do not know.
Let me look.
He was just on the
Also,
Joe
his
Rogan
knowledge-
podcast, so you can catch him on Rogan's podcast recently.
Yep,
His
he was an
knowledge
Air
of-
Force veteran.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
His knowledge of languages and all of that kind of plays together into someone who grew up in a lot of places.
Oh, he's
for that
so
reason.
cool. I want to hang out with him so bad one day. Like he just sounds like he'd be a badass person to like just hang out with for a night, you know. Anyway,
Yeah.
moving on.
Agreed.
Bjork, one of probably all of our favorite artists here. Check out this fucking dress. Her new dress.
I looked this up.
Oh my god. So it's made by Gucci. It took 870 hours to construct.
It's Gucci.
Look at that. That is it's really that's all I just wanted to show. Like how cool it was.
Beautiful.
Bjork, everything she does is just I think
She's
very
magic.
forward thinking. She is
She's
magic.
a fairy.
She is like a fairy. So I want to show that briefly. And then I've got for my last thing, fan music.
Fan music.
So this is
Music written by fans. Or music written by people with fans as the music instrument.
Yeah, that's more like it. So I want to play this video. This is some pretty like innovative shit. Now it's not necessarily like the best music ever, but it's pretty cool that they've been able to figure this out. I'm gonna bring this up full screen here, and will you put this up?
ちょっとこう音色がギターっぽい音色なんで、ちょっとやっぱ担ぎたいなっていうふうに思ったんですね。それでギターストラップをつけてみています。
So this is pretty cool. Like they took an actual fan, a motorized fan, and they built some sort of contraption to.
こういう感じですね。
Oops, sorry, that was my bad.
これがいいんじゃないかなっていう。
So check this shit out.
大丈夫ですね。
Yeah, I don't know what that thing is, but like that he's holding, but the fan itself has holes in it.
It's like a weird theremin type thing.
It is kind of like a theremin, isn't it? Again, not the best music ever, but the concept
He
of it,
could
I
do the
think,
national anthem for sure.
is right.
Our national anthem.
Conceptually, it's pretty interesting, though, don't you think, Profile?
Yeah, I wonder if there's metal involved in the fan, could he be using something like an EBO?
Maybe, but there.
I don't know
It
if
looks
that'd
like
work, but-
plastic, but it looks like the holes are spaced, like differently for each. Like if you move in, maybe the notes go up and down. Like I'm just gonna. Anyway, I think it. Besides how it works, I think it's pretty cool that people are designing musical
pretty
instruments
innovative.
out of things like this. I think that's pretty awesome.
Absolutely.
So, usually I would have a reverse song game here, but I am leaving for Los Angeles to do some recording tomorrow, and I did not have enough time to put that section together. So I will do it next time we meet for the show, but not tonight.
It's okay. We get to do my
So-
Craigslist.
I think we're done with the picture-in-picture, right?
Yeah, Kev. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, get that off my screen.
Off your,
that off
off
of your
your
face.
Get
forehead.
it off
Yeah.
my forehead. Okay, so the Craigslist ads that I chose this weekend are pretty interesting, I think. Do you have them?
I have them in a folder here.
You have them in a folder. Perfect. Okay, so the first one is the Lost You one.
Okay.
Okay,
I love this part of the show.
Will you bring this up,
It's
Kev?
always fun.
I agree. All right, so Lost You. Brenda, 3 Wade. I 6 have been 0 searching for 7 you. This is for Bob. So please 9, contact me 5, or if anyone knows her, she was living in 2 Gresham, Oregon 3, the last I knew. Contact
That's
her.
a phone number.
Contact
Yeah, it's a
7,
phone number.
have her
It's a
email
hooker.
me,
Yeah,
please.
no. It's
It's a hooker ad.
360-749-5237. That's a phone number.
It's a hooker ad.
So
Wow.
I don't know if it's a hooker ad, but I just think this dude is this is Bob apparently looking for Brenda Wade. But I just thought it was pretty clever how he threw that in there.
The phone number.
Just like he just seems like an older man, an older gent trying to
some
figure
pussy?
out how to get around, not get some
Oh,
pussy. He's
sorry,
trying
I
to figure out how
my
to get
bad.
around the Craigslist. I thought it was cute.
Gotcha.
So the next one is put my head in loo. And it reads, I come to you stripped full nude and put my head in loo as you remove panties and pee. I lick you clean, make you a cup of chat and leave. This can be before or after work. If on period, still pee or come to my place.
God.
Use my loo, no sex, just use my face. When I am nude or stripped from waist up, you dressed 18 to 80. That's a fucking range.
That's a
Wow.
broad range of
He's
ages.
like, I want every single person who fits in this. I don't want any equal opportunity employer.
This is very similar to like there's some people who are just really in with this toilet thing. Like, don't you have an update to later on to the story, or are you gonna tell us now or later?
I'll tell you guys. I'll tell it now. So I talked about this last week, but I had been emailing some ad. The flushing ad. The swirly guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he was looking for someone to give him a swirly, and I emailed him last week, and I think I read his response last week.
Yeah, you did.
But I had more questions about it. So basically, I emailed him asking what the gig details were, and he was like, Code, my name is Flush. I'm sorry for taking so long getting back to you. It was because of the storm. My internet is not back up. I just gotten a phone today with internet. I'm looking for a family woman to fill a 2-hour gig. I'm looking for a family woman who is toilet swirly aware.
No, that's not the ad, Kev. Yeah, she's
I
just
need a
reading it.
swirly giver only. You would be giving me swirly for 2 hours. You would also have a script, meaning that you would say things to me before and during the swirlies. You would also be flushing my driver's license down the toilet. More on that later.
That's the best part of the whole
and
thing.
that was my fucking question. Was like, why the fuck do you want me to flush your driver's license down the toilet? So then that's why I emailed him again, and I said, can you elaborate on the flushing your ID down the toilet, please? He's like, hi, Cody. If I do pick you for my gig, you would be paid the same day, but after the gig is done. I would show you the pay before the gig so that you do know that I do have the pay, and at that point I will give you my car keys and my driver's license for you to hold on to until the gig is over. When the gig is over, I will pay you in full, and at that point you will give me my car keys back, and instead of you giving the driver's license back to me, you will take my driver's license and flush it down the toilet, because that's the last part of the gig. The gig is now complete. I hope I answered your question. And I'm like, you definitely did not answer my question. Why the fuck do you want me to flush your driver's license down the toilet? That's the one part that had me interested. What satisfaction does it give you? Can you please tell me of past experiences that you've had with flushing? And he says, the reason why I want swirlies to be given to me is because it does feel like I'm being flushed down the toilet. I never knew what a swirly was till a freshman in high school, and that was in the fall of 1984. The reason that I would like to have my driver's license to be flushed is because it does have my picture on it, and I would like to see myself go down the toilet. The last time I had someone give me a swirly was back in 2005, but that person has since moved away.
Wow.
So he just essentially just wants to see himself being flushed down the toilet.
Where do you think that? Where do you think that comes from?
It stems. He said high school is when he learned about it.
Right, but I wonder, like, what triggers certain proclivities or certain fetishes in people? Like I've always been really curious about. There has to be some moment where a sexual feeling and a certain experience happened that causes your brain to associate pleasure with a certain thing.
Yeah.
And I've
sounds
always
sounds like a Freudian thing. Like
Right.
Freud.
But there has to be a
Try to track
crux,
things
a crux
backward.
of two things that happen that trigger your brain into just wanting to relive an experience like that because it's pleasurable.
But
I've always been very curious about what that is.
I think in a Freudian sense, he seemed to relate a lot of things back to your mother.
Or just a childhood
I don't know how that relates to
experience,
the
you
toilet
know?
flushing, but
Right.
I don't know. I mean, it's a very good question.
Yeah,
There's
no,
strange
it's
triggers in people.
it's weird. It's interesting.
I don't know. I know a guy who I was with a guy for a while who had a foot fetish, and I asked him, like, do you remember a specific moment where you developed this foot fetish? And he said he remembers being really young and playing with those little toy cars, like the Matchbox cars, and he was like on the floor and zooming around with it, and like he would always like try and like run over the people's toes, and that gave him a sexual feeling then. And since then he knew that he had a foot fetish.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it's weird. Everyone's got their thing that they like, but I've always
The
just,
moment is
yeah. What's
interesting.
the moment? Like
Yeah.
the moment is a very interesting. Like it's different for everybody. It has to be a convergence of like something with a sexual feeling.
Yeah,
You know.
it's interesting.
So
Yep.
Yeah. On to the next one. This one I was hesitant to put up. This one's in the link that I checked with you before the show if we should do this.
She's like, do you think this is too dirty? And I'm
It
like,
was-
you know what? No, because we're just
It's
gonna do.
it's there.
We're gonna do what we want
almost.
for this show.
It's just
If
fucking.
it's on Craigslist, I mean, it seems
It
All
like
right,
is
well-
on Craigslist, but it's gross. Also, I need to state that as well that these kind of the ones that I've been posting have been from Edinburgh. Edinburgh,
Yeah,
am I
Scotland.
pronouncing that?
This is
It's in
Scotland.
Scotland.
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh. And I've
Edinburgh.
Can you
been
bring this up, Kevin?
so cum tributes.
Whoa, wait.
That's someone's senior photo, dudes.
Oh my gosh.
Like, go through the other couple pictures.
Oh, there's more.
There's more.
Oh my god. I wonder if that's real semen.
That is real semen.
Whoa.
Right. So
Okay.
this dude, it just says, I love wanking over photos. If you'd like to see your loved one /friend /work colleague with a dollop of my cum on them, just ping over a pic and I'll see what I can do for you. I don't care if they're girls or boys.
Oh my god.
It's
Wow.
funny. But so what I was going to say is that when I was searching in the city, in this country, I'm seeing ads all over the place that I'm flagging them left and right because it's like, I'm looking for a 16-year-old and I'm like, oh my God, that's fucking illegal. And then I realize that their age of consent there is 16.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God, am I going to get in trouble for like these fucking 16-year-old dicks on my fucking computer because I'm in this country and even though it's legal there, you know?
Right. Right.
It's weird. I don't know how I feel about it.
yeah.
Actually, I think the age of consent is 16 in parts of this country too.
Not for like having naked pictures of yourself though. Like if someone has a naked picture of a 16-year-old,
true.
that's fucking illegal.
That's
Crazy.
distributing child pornography.
That's
Yeah.
distributing child pornography.
Yep.
You're joining Anthony Wiener.
Wiener. Wiener.
Anthony
The
Wiener.
Veen.
Davine. Okay, so the next one is talent. Okay.
Oh, that was awesome.
Okay. So you have a fart talent, contact me. You are ideally aged 23 to 36. I eat any fart you do. Can be you and maids. Arse well cleaned, piss drunk too. Reply here or kick Captain Kettle. Cheers. That's from
Wow.
Newcastle, UK.
UK. Okay, UK.
Woo.
Is he okay?
So that
Who knows?
apparently there's like Brazilian fart porn where like hot girls are like they do sexual acts and then they're sniffing farts out of like other girls. Like I don't so I'll just break it down for you. For me personally, anything that
Please.
has to do with piss or shit, like or farts, obviously, like that's like I've never thought any of that was like very particularly sexy at all. Like I mean, I like some other like hardcore stuff. I've never been into fetishes or like bondage and stuff. But the minute that like piss and shit comes into play, like you lost me. I lost the plot. Like I just don't.
Yeah, like where did that?
I don't. How did that? How does that get? How is that sexy? I'm personally I'm not into it. Not judging, but I don't understand. Like I'm not like personally into it. So I don't understand how people are into like fart smelling. I'll eat your fart. Like that gets someone off.
That's different than sniffing a fart. That's eating a fart.
Ugh.
That's a whole
Woof.
different body.
Woof.
Some people
Woof.
just want like a good old Cleveland steamer, you know? They just want to be shit on their
describe
chest.
describe a Cleveland steamer for our listeners.
I think
Isn't that the saran wrap thing? Or no? There's so many weird names for like Dirty Sanchez and Cleveland Steamer. I think the Cleveland Steamer
the Alaskan pipeline?
It has something to do with shit, obviously. But Isn't that where like you put saran wrap on your face and someone takes a dump on your face or something? I don't fucking know.
It's one person craps on another's chest and then
Oh,
sits down and
oh.
rocks back and forth like a steamroller.
Gross.
I don't know why it's related to Cleveland, but I'm slightly offended.
Right.
My hometown.
Wow.
Anyways, I have one more, and this one I think fucking rules. Because this dude fucking rules. So
All right.
it's called Charge Up and J.O. And this dude's 38-year-old from Houston. Of course.
Bring this up, Kev.
Okay. The crystal I wear around my neck contains an essence that gets recharged when I jack it with a bro who also has a crystal. It gives me confidence at work, home, social situations, etc. Nobody knows it's a jack-off crystal but me and my bros. I've seen it glow white while jerking it with a bud. That's how I know this is real.
Oh my
You
god.
can come over for as long as you want, but I need a picture of you, preferably wearing a crystal before I waste my time.
Wow.
So just you gotta charge up his jack-off crystal.
That's pretty awesome.
That's juju. That's just like
That's
some
pretty
woo-woo
awesome.
shit. That's woo woo.
Most of these I don't even know what to say to.
I know.
I know. It's
right?
like you can't respond.
I know.
Like, wow.
I wonder who does respond to these.
I wish there was a way to find the people who respond to those types of ads and to invite them in to do an interview.
Over Skype.
Over Skype. Yeah,
Definitely
Okay.
over
not
Skype.
in the
Over
not in
Skype.
our
Yeah,
fucking
definitely
house.
over Skype.
And that's fine. I just, it'd be interesting to talk to the people who get turned on and excited by these ads.
Oh,
who
I agree. I'd be
sponsor them,
fascinated
right?
to understand
Everyone
like where it
has
comes
some
from.
people who believe in the same stuff, you
Right.
know.
I'm not judging. I think, everyone has proclivities and things that they find, things that turn them on or things that just, that work for them.
Mm-hmm.
I have no, unless it's fucking a kid or doing just something that's like hurting another human being, I really don't have any judgments towards anyone who wants to get off a certain way. I mean, how can any of us judge people for that? Unless it's hurting someone else, unless that person wants to be hurt. But if they're a minor, that's a whole different fucking thing.
Do
That's
you
just not-
remember
Oh, sure.
when we
Yeah.
were first starting this show, we were coming up with different ideas, and for some reason, my friend had recently told me about how her friend is a sex worker, has people ask her to dress up as like a young kid
Right. I
to
remember
get
you brought
off
that up.
their fetish
So
for
that they
their
don't do it in
pedophilic
real
fetishes,
life.
so that they don't do it in real
Right.
life. So like it's strange, and that's a conversation to have, and I want to interview them, but I did want to bring that up to loop back to eventually and do an episode on.
I think what
interview
adds another dimension to that, and I don't know. I guess I'm not addressing it morally, but at different times in history, people have been considered of age much younger. People would get married
At
and
13 or 12,
Mhm.
yeah.
13 or 14. It was not uncommon, and it wasn't considered bad. So biologically speaking, someone is ready to have sex when they're able to conceive.
Right.
So everything else is a moral layer that we put on the situation as a culture. And while I am not advocating that our moral layer is wrong or anything like that, it does make it a little more complex, right? Like, what makes it wrong at X age or not at X age, and what is that based on?
Right. I agree.
People have desires. I guess part of the thing that's the weirdest, I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, most of us would agree that there's a difference between someone being sexually attracted to someone who might be underage but is sexually mature, and having attraction to someone who is not sexually mature, which is a
Right.
child.
Right.
Even, I guess,
Infant.
from the biological argument or evolutionary argument or whatever argument that is, there is a dividing line that's there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But it's a weird topic because a lot of people who have these types of feelings, from what I've read, they suffer for it a lot. Like they can't help it. It's like a sex drive that's as natural as maybe a normal person's would be for someone around their own
Right.
age or something.
Right.
And I'm interested because I doubt we'll be able to. I mean, we could. It would be awesome. We could find someone who has that, and we can ask them questions in a non-judgmental way. But I'm also interested to hear, like, the stories of these sex workers who they get paid to dress up like a younger form of themselves and
Right.
act like a child so that they can perform these fantasies.
Sure.
How young? I mean, was there a particular range that they were comfortable with? Were they uncomfortable with certain ages they were trying to portray? Or
They were definitely uncomfortable at some, and I mean, I'm sure they've had requests where they easily turned them down because they fell out of their scope of practice.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we're just gonna have to ask them. But I did want to bring that back up for open discussion at a later date.
that would be an interesting topic for sure.
Well, I think it's time for our topic.
It's what the fact.
Oh, it's what the fact. Oh,
Yeah.
all right. Here we go.
Giving you the questions yet. All right. So, what the fact is where I ask some multiple choice or true and false questions, usually about history or science or just strange things about the world, and we see who can answer. Now, in this section, in this segment, I should say, our engineer is able to contribute. So, Kevin, if you have any ideas on this, please feel free to guess.
Chime all
right.
in.
Yeah, I think you're microphoned up, right? So
Yes.
all good. Excellent. All right. This one is a multiple choice question. The highest point in the state of Florida is how many feet above sea level? 345 feet, 3,426 feet, 14,000 feet, or 62 feet?
I'm going to go with 62.
I'll go with the first answer. I'll go with A.
314, you say?
345.
345.
Is that your answer?
Yes.
That is correct.
Oh.
Yoo-hoo!
Nice one.
High five, Kevin.
Next one. What is the percentage of Americans considered to be overweight? A, 16%. B, 66%. C, 5%. Or D, 89%.
Overweight or obese? Overweight.
Overweight.
I'm going to go with 66.
I'm gonna go with 80.
Last one.
Scott is correct.
Oh, nice.
66%.
That you have more hope for.
But that's kind of
85 seems a little much, but yeah, I mean that's still a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, what the percentage of those are actually obese? I mean, I know there's a huge disparity between overweight and obese, but I wonder if like overweight, they're just categorizing overweight and obese all within that 66%.
Yeah, probably.
well,
I mean,
because overweight would include obese, but it would be broader, I'm guessing.
Right. I wonder how many
So
overweight people are in Ethiopia. Probably not 66%.
Guessing not a lot. Yeah.
Low percentage.
Yeah.
So this one I'm going to do a little bit differently. I'm going to award the winning answer to whoever gets closest.
Okay.
So it's not multiple choice. It's not true or false. The average supermarket in the United States wastes how many pounds of food each year?
I assume this is going to be in tons.
No, he said pounds.
Okay.
The average supermarket. So this would not be the total of supermarkets. Just to be clear, it would be the average supermarket, the Safeway down the street or
How many
whatever.
pounds a year?
Yeah, on average.
Like
does it
throws
waste?
away food. I honestly don't have an like even close to an educated guess. I'm going to say I don't know, 50,000 pounds.
Okay. Cody?
I'm gonna go closer to 20,000 pounds.
Okay. Kevin?
15,000 pounds.
The answer is 3,000.
That's it.
Really?
We're idiots. My God, I have
I-
a bad gauge of this.
Yeah, I thought it would be just. I thought it was gonna be like Americans are assholes, like factoid, like.
Well, you know, the reason why I did it this way is to just sort of, I was kind of curious what we would assume, right? It's an interesting topic. I think 3,000 pounds is actually a lot of food if you think about it. But on the same token, you know, I think they learned to manage it pretty well. But I had no idea what any of this was before I read it. 3,000 pounds of food, it just goes to waste. And, you know, I think I believe it was a few years back in France, they made it mandatory that older food gets given away to the homeless or poor.
Right. That's great.
So if there are 3,000 pounds of food in an average supermarket that goes to waste, that to me says there's 3,000 pounds of food available for someone who's less fortunate than us to eat.
It's
And,
less than 10 pounds a day.
Well, 10 pounds a day would feed a handful of homeless people.
Sure.
True.
You know? But yeah, anyway, I thought that one was interesting. The next one. What is the approximate percentage of Americans currently considered to be low income or living in poverty? A, 8%, B, 48%, C, 26%, or D, 63%?
Americans living in poverty, huh?
Considered to be low income or living in poverty, like basically.
I'm gonna go with D.
That category. Okay, you go with 63%. Cody?
What was B again?
48%.
Let's go with that.
Okay.
B
Kevin?
as well.
All right. Cody and Kevin.
Well,
Oh.
Got it.
You're writing my
48%.
answers, dude.
No way.
Part of this, has been Americana kind of stuff, and it's about issues that sometimes we touch on, just, poor, or this or that. I thought this one was interesting. Almost half of the people in the United States are considered living in poverty or low income. That's an astounding.
That's a lot for
percentage.
America, the land of opportunity.
The wealthiest country on earth, supposedly, right? We dominate and dictate what's going on in most of the world, but we can't even manage to get half of our population above the poverty line. That's, I don't know.
It's pretty
worth
crazy.
discussing.
Yeah.
This one's kind of fun. I'm interested to see who gets this one. Who was once a correspondent for the New York Daily Tribune? Albert Einstein, JFK, Stalin, Karl Marx, or Carl Jung? I personally think it's interesting that any one of these people might have been.
Right.
And one of them was.
I'm gonna go with Young.
I'll go with JFK.
Kevin?
I'll go with Karl Marx.
Kevin is correct.
Oh
Well,
shit!
duh.
That was gonna be my first guess, but I was
That was
like,
mine
"There's no
too, but I'm
fucking
like,
way."
I don't know.
Isn't that weird, though? Karl Marx, of all people,
Right? Yeah.
New York
was
Tribune,
a correspondent for the New York Daily Tribune.
Right.
When I saw that, I was completely flabbergasted
Huh.
by it.
It's fucking weird.
He was a good writer.
I guess so. I wonder, it'd be interesting to dig up his articles from the New York Daily Tribune.
Oh,
Like, I
yeah.
wonder what those were like. Written for an American audience. Anyway, the next one. This is a true or false question. Alaska has a longer coastline than all of the other 49 U.S. states put together. True or false?
I'm gonna go with true.
A longer coastline. Is that? I'm gonna go with false.
Kevin?
It's got to be true because false seems too obvious.
Or he's trying to fuck with y'all.
I do sometimes try to fuck with you all, but no, it is true.
What? That's
I
crazy.
knew it.
All right.
Alaska's pretty big.
I
I
know,
don't know if you
but
looked
just
at a
all
map before,
coasts
like
combined.
but it's there's a lot. It's coast all the
Lot
way
of
around.
coast. Yeah.
It's turtles
Um,
all the way down.
I have one last one. I think you'll like this. The French Emperor Napoleon was once attacked by a horde of A, rabbits, B, rats, C, roaches, or D, reindeer.
Napoleon.
I'm gonna go with rabbits because I'm a huge Holy Grail fan. So that just seems like the fun answer.
I like reindeer as an answer.
When you use the word horde, are you using that correctly?
It all depends, doesn't it?
Could it be a gaggle of reindeer?
Right, or like a
Gaggle.
Or a
murder.
flock of reindeer? I mean,
I'll put it this way: there's no trick in the use of the term horde.
okay. I think that's what he wanted to
Just
know.
a group.
I'll go with rabbits.
It is true that is rabbits.
Rabbits.
Really?
Whoa.
Yeah, and the backstory is kind of funny. Basically, what it amounts to is looking to celebrate the end of a war. There was a treaty that was signed between the French Empire and Imperial Russia, right? And he wanted to celebrate, so the emperor proposed a rabbit hunt. And his chief of staff was asked to make this happen, right? So they create this outdoor luncheon, right? Invited a bunch of the military's top people, and the guy collected a colony of rabbits, right? The stories range from whether it was hundreds of bunnies to 3,000 bunnies, but there were a lot of them, right? And so they caged them all on the fringes of this grassy field. And when Napoleon started to prowl, accompanied with like beaters and gun bearers and all this stuff, ready for the hunt, the rabbits were all released from their cages, right? And the hunt was on. It was kind of this big deal. But the weird thing happened. Instead of scurrying, the rabbits didn't. Instead, they raced towards Napoleon and his men, like hundreds of fuzzy bunnies gunning it for this guy.
It's kind of cute.
And they thought it was really funny, right? But as it continued, they got kind of concerned because this whole sea of these things was storming him like crazy. They were running up his legs and climbing up into his jacket, and he was
Some
trying
magician's
to shoot
wet
them
dream
away.
right there.
Right, he was trying to shoo them away with his riding crop, and they were grabbing sticks.
That's a
trying
funny
to-
scene in my mind.
Right?
Like that's
Totally. The coachmen were cracking their bullwhips at it and everything, but this barrage of rabbits kept coming at these guys. And Napoleon had to flee to his carriage, right? And it didn't stop. They were jumping into the carriage and stuff.
that's hilarious.
It was
they
it was totally
attacking?
crazy. They were just coming at and jumping on. It was kind of weird.
So Napoleon had to flee from rabbits. I mean, if they were biting and attacking, I can see all right. But
Well, there was
just to
thousands
flee,
of them,
Right.
apparently, right? So the one comment that I thought was funny, I'll quote it. It says, "With a finer understanding of Napoleonic strategy than most of his generals, the rabbit horde divided into two wings and poured around the flanks of the party and headed for the imperial coach."
Oh damn!
Wow.
That's hell yeah.
Yeah, so the attack, quote unquote, ceased only at the point in which the coach rolled away.
Well, that seems like a little
So-
bit of folklore in that.
Well, apparently it's true. The amount of rabbits may be in dispute. And I guess where it went wrong is that instead of trapping wild rabbits, which would have a tendency to be afraid and then flee the scene, which is what they wanted so they could chase them and hunt them,
Right.
he bought a bunch of tame rabbits from local farmers. And so they didn't really see the hunters as dangerous and saw them as a potential food source. So they
Right.
also-
Like adopt me.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I thought that one was kind of...
Speaking of animals fucking attacking
Yeah,
you, I
the-
just got my ass
The
smacked
animal,
by that.
the
cat.
Philia and Quirky want to be fed. It's dinner time. That's why they're all over us right now.
Holy fuck, that was. Take me to dinner first. Jesus,
So-
Quirky.
So that was the end of my little section. I
What
thought the
the
rabbits might be a nice end. So now I believe we're on to our show topic.
If I had known.
I had known.
Yep. Well, this is Cody recommended this. This was your idea.
Yeah, and I'm at a time in my life now where I'm learning a lot about
You're
myself.
22, right?
I'm 22 years old. I'm learning a lot about myself, and I mean, I want to make as few mistakes as possible. I guess that's all I can hope for myself right now, and just do my life as best as I can. And I thought it would be a good topic to bring up and ask you guys if you had known when you were younger, my age, what would you have done differently? What kind of advice? Stuff like that.
So they're
That's a big, broad
yeah,
topic.
it is a
isn't
broad
It is
topic.
a broad topic,
I
and
mean-
I have a lot of questions. And
Well, why don't you start with some of your questions?
Yeah, let's get going that way.
for my first question, first question would probably be, well, how did you guys? This is kind of a main question, but how did you guys know what you wanted to do with your lives? You know, how did you figure out that you guys were so wanting to do music?
I got really
full
lucky.
time.
I got really lucky. I knew I wanted to make electronic music specifically from about 10 years old. I heard a song that I liked on the radio, and I had always loved music. I started playing piano since I was 3 years old, so I've always been into music. But when I heard electronic music for the first time, it was even as a child, it was just magical to me. And I always wanted to do that. There was never a question in my mind that that's what I wanted to do. So I know that I am lucky in that regard. I know that a lot of people spend their entire lives not knowing what they want to do at all. So I consider myself very lucky that I found something that I was uber passionate about
And could do it.
and well, you know, with work obviously, but yes,
Yeah.
had a proclivity for doing it better than most, I suppose.
Right.
You know.
Well, can
It was
get
similar
paid to
for
do
me.
it.
It was similar for me. I think I was always really into music, and around the 4th or 5th grade, and I was a huge fan of like Duran Duran and Depeche Mode and all these kinds of things at that age. And I remember during one Christmas, someone had given me as a gift like a Yamaha keyboard, like one of those little PSR or whatever they're called, little, you know, consumer keyboards where you can play little beats and it'll do like auto accompaniment and stuff like that. And I was really into writing poetry and stuff at the time, and I had a buddy who would play little keys, and so he would start playing songs and I would start attempting to sing like my poetry on top of them. And between he and I and even myself, I started learning how to record at that age because, you know, I don't know, maybe I always had a kind of like Scott, maybe I think the electronic part or the technical part was something that was interesting to me. So I would record into a ghetto blaster, a ghetto box, right, that had a little mic on the front, and we would hit record and we would play and I would sing, and then we would get another ghetto blaster, and then we would play the tape on that we had just recorded on one, and then we would like overdub while having the other mic on the other one record, and we would go back and forth, and essentially in the 4th and 5th grade I was multi-tracking without even knowing what it was or having ever heard of it, just because I was trying to figure out how to make songs that
But
had
you got
layers,
lucky
like
too.
all the bands
I
that
mean, you
liked.
knew what you wanted to do like pretty young as well. I mean,
Well, yeah, exactly. It was the same thing. Like it just naturally came out. Like the instruments were suddenly there, and then I had like these little recording devices, and like I just made it all up without any guidance because it just seemed like the natural thing to do. It was like my natural language because it gave me musical accompaniment to the writing that I was doing, and I was so into music as a kid.
so in
that it all
essence,
just
with the
made
question,
sense.
in essence, with for both of us for the question, then I guess it's like what feels good naturally. That the thing that the first thing maybe that feels really good that comes natural to you.
Yeah, but then there's also like, how do you make money doing that? You know, like I
But
know
you
that
don't
you
care
do a
about
full
money
time.
at that time,
Yeah.
right? Not in 4th or 5th grade. Like the spark that starts that
Yeah.
doesn't have anything to do with money, though, because you're not thinking of that necessarily.
Right,
You might
but-
be thinking of making songs like the people you idolize, but you're not even thinking about an income at that point. At least I wasn't.
Right, and what
So-
I'm trying to ask is, so you know what you're passionate about, you know what you enjoy doing, but how do you know that you could make that into
You don't.
like okay, so you
don't know
ended
for
up
sure.
making it into a job, like you're doing this full time, and you're doing something different, like you're kind of doing it on the side still, right now, like
Well,
you're
yeah,
doing a
it's-
full time
it's-
job.
It's entered my professional life in various ways, though, too, more on the technology side. So it's my path has been different than Scott's, but I think to hit what he said, I think the second that you ask that question, though, is you don't know that you can make it at that point. What you do know, and I'm going to guess that Scott feels similar, is if you're, by comparison, I guess, to what's around you or through inner confidence, if you feel like you have a particular knack for it that is maybe better than the average,
Right.
that you have something that you think could catch on or do well, it definitely is a strong motivating factor to help you or convince you to dig into it and spend a lot of time at it and put it out there and see what you can accomplish. And if it starts to bite, if you're then lucky and at the right place, the right time with the right audience and all that kind of stuff. And I think for Scott, that definitely happened in a big way. Then it kind of reaffirms that and you dig in further. Right?
It's interesting though, because I mean, I think about this all the time. Like if you're a little person and you want to be an NBA player, they tell you can do anything that anything that you can dream, you can do.
Bullshit.
I mean, there are obviously physical limitations to certain jobs, right?
Yeah, if you're over 6'5", you can't be an astronaut.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't know that. So I mean, I guess you kind of just have to. I don't know. Like I don't want to like stop anyone from dreaming and like you have like if you have a proclivity for something and you have a knack for it.
It's not even being good though. It's you have to stand out, because there are some shitty artists that make it out there. I mean, not even.
But they're not good necessarily. They stand. Well, see,
they just stand out. Like they have a personality, which makes them.
You know what though? But I would say, you're right. But I would say on top of that, there are shitty artists out there who are successful, but there was probably a producer or someone involved in that process that is good.
Right.
Because they made it sound like something that can sell, even if the basic artist is mediocre. You know what I mean?
So in
like,
but in that instance, then it would be about your ability to network.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people who have been very successful who aren't particularly great. That
there's luck involved.
Could schmooze their way into fucking any situation and just make it work. Sure. So I mean, I don't know. Without veering too far off from your topic, how do you? If you're mildly good at something, be very good at networking, and if you're really good at something, get better at that.
To take more time to practice.
Yeah,
I would add to that a little bit. If you're doing something that's artistic in some way or something that's kind of off the beaten path, then a lot of this stuff comes into play. If you're really good at, let's say, math or science, if you would be a great lawyer, or if you have an interest in things like that where you can study and get a degree and there's an expected income that you could reasonably get to, I mean, because you can with those kinds of professions, it's a different ballgame, right? If you really like math and you think you could be a research scientist and you go to school and you get the qualifications, chances are, if you're any good at it, you can be a research scientist and you will make X. And I think you can kind of calculate how that works financially. The artist part's always tricky because it just depends on who likes you when and if the right things fall into place.
And you have to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, you have to put in the work.
Factor.
You have to put in the hard work, but there's a lot of luck involved too.
Okay.
So it depends what you're good at. What you like.
So when you guys were my age, did you guys see yourself being where you're at now? Where did you guys imagine yourself being at your age now? So say you're 22, where do you think that you would be when you're 40s?
My partner, my ex-partner in Deep Sky, we used to, when we were 18, we used to go sneak into the Marriott pool. We lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, not a big town. And we used to jump the fence and sneak into the Marriott pool at night and then sit by the pool and imagine what it would be like to be flown to some city and be sitting by the pool at our hotel room. Like to visualize like what that felt like. Like one day when we get flown to a show, we're going to be kicking it by the pool, and we do that. And we used to talk about like what would we have to do if we made it. Like we'd have these conversations with each other. Like what would we be doing if we made it?
So you imagined yourself having made it. It
was like visualization. And one of my things was if we ever make it, we'll get to remix Madonna. That was when I was 18 years old, and then 10 years later that happened like twice. So I think that to back up, like the visualization part, man, there's something very powerful about the visualization of something. It makes it real in your mind. The fact that we would go and sneak into like hotel pools, like in our hometown, in the middle, it was freezing, but it helped us to feel what it felt like to want to pursue it that much more. I don't know, that to me visualization has always been a very powerful component for my at least my drive. You know.
Yeah.
So
For
where
me,
would you
I don't
see
know if it's
yourself?
as clear. I think in some ways I wanted to see myself maybe more focused on the creative part of the music thing at this point than I maybe have the luxury of doing right now. But at the same time, for me, I didn't really dream about being a rock star kind of thing. For me, the writing was a lifestyle and something I needed to do so I wouldn't go insane. A lot of what I did and focused on was very underground styles of music. So there was probably not like a huge payday that I ever envisioned that I would be living off of now.
Right.
So I think for me, I just wanted to make sure that I could always enshrine my ability to do that, and I have released music in various forms at various times, and I am a semi-professional musician, but my main income doesn't come from that now. And I think that I've always been a somewhat flexible person, so I've sort of navigated this as I've gone to try to ensure that I have the stability to keep writing the music. And so that was part of the influence behind the decisions that I made.
Right.
I went a little more corporate, but that actually started when I started working for a professional audio company and got into the technology aspect of creating some of the tools that I use now. And so that got me into that whole industry, got me really close to the instruments, and sort of enshrined that part of the life for me. And then it happened to buy me some other skills that have now turned into a better income, which has now given me my house and my studio. And
I don't
because
know
of
the
that,
house. Yeah.
So I think music was always the key thing in the dream, but
Yeah.
I think for me, it wasn't really so specifically focused on one accomplishment in
Right.
it as much as enshrining it and preserving it somehow.
Okay. And I guess
So.
when I see myself at your guys' ages, I envision having created a few different in my mind, like my main goal right now is I want to create a retreat, like a piece of land where you can go and just pick out whatever kind of healing you want to get, whether it be through meditation, whether it be through massage therapy or like
music.
or music or naturopathic healing. Like I want to have a big stage where they can have TED Talks there. I want
Which
it to
is
be
so
a community
funny,
space.
because that's what Naomi and I have been talking about doing for years now.
Right.
It's so funny
And
that you want to do that too.
That's exactly what I want to have created. I want to create a space where people can come and just like learn about themselves and help discover parts of themselves to better go back out into the real world and best contribute as much as possible. And to be able to work their cameras so that we can see them.
Oh yeah.
I want to teach workshops there, and so by the time I'm your age, I want to have those established. I want to be giving I want to be doing like coaching people on how to achieve certain things and just best helping people as much as possible.
I think that's a pretty awesome goal.
Yeah,
actually.
and I think I'm definitely like that. I have that mind and drive and heart set, and I would be content with that. And are you guys content with where you are right now?
I would say if I look back on my life, I can't complain with the things that I've accomplished. But much like when I thought of making it back then, right, when I was 18, not having done anything, I didn't even have a demo tape. Like, it was interesting because when we got to that point where we actually were remixing Madonna, I remembered that moment. I'm like, holy shit, we're here. We've arrived. Like, we got to what we talked about. And there just seemed like so much more that what I wanted to do stuff for movies at that point. And I wanted to, it didn't feel like making it. And I don't think it ever does. I think that there are always, if I look back, I'm not disappointed by any of it, but there's so much more. There's always going to be so much more.
Yeah, we're goal-oriented
like
beings.
that you
Once
want to
we
do,
achieve something, we want to do something next.
But it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away from all of that other stuff. It's just that I'm not dead yet. So, and I'm also I've always been a motivated person. And so that motivation and that drive, I still have a very childlike perspective on the world and things that I feel like I'm able to accomplish. Like, I talk about this guy that I'm very much into, Cell Dweller, all the time. And he's actually one of my friends. And he's like almost 50 years old. And he, just in the last 10 years, his career took off. and he is just a fucking incredible producer. And I look up to him, and I'm inspired by him all the time, just by how he is in shape and how he has created this like almost
Found
just
a
niche for
balance.
himself, and it's created a niche for himself. But I remember what his music used to. He was always good, but he got to that fucking expert level just in the last 10 years, right around the age that I'm at right now. And so there were times in my life when I'm like, you know what, maybe it's time for me to quit and do something else. Like, I had my time with Deep Sky. Maybe it's time for me to like move on and like grow the fuck up. Like, maybe it's over. And then I saw him, and I was like, and then he had made it like in his 40s. And I mean, he's the best he's ever been, and he's almost 50 years old. And I'm like, and he was the reason why I was like, fuck that. I'm going to keep going, because it's possible, like, to go to the next level and do. And I really like the idea. And I think, Profile, you'll agree with this, but in electronic music, I think an electronic musician's shelf life is definitely extended just by proxy in terms of the kind of music that we make. So I'm not done yet, and I still have things I want to accomplish, and
Me too.
people are doing it. So I think that,
When
you have to just do what makes you happy, and that's my dream, is to still keep going. So
when I look at it, it's pretty awesome what I have now, actually. Even though I've had to make some sacrifices as far as how much time I have to write music, maybe that it's not a full-time gig, in a lot of ways, and I'm going to guess that Scott can understand this part too. At this age right now, I'm way better at it than I was before, even when maybe I was more prolific in some of the writing sense. Just the things that I've learned in the last number of years, it's just been huge. And recently, while I've had jobs and all this other crap, while I'm arguably probably less focused on it than I was in my 20s just because of time, I've had the ability to write an album with some of the people I grew up listening to. I had the opportunity a few months ago and did play live on stage with people from a handful of bands that I grew up as some favorite bands of mine that were all part of our project. That project's now going to be opening up for Depeche Mode in Europe. At the moment, it doesn't look like I'm going to go on that part of it, but the project is now going to be opening up for my favorite band ever. The thing I was writing on.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
that's
huge
very
stuff,
cool.
and that kind of stuff is bucket list kind of stuff. Some of that's beyond bucket list stuff, because I never thought it was going to happen, right? And
Right.
I just turned 43, and all this shit's just been happening in the last year. So I think, along with my own confidence in my mixing and my production, and along with some of the successes and opportunities that I've had, and to Scott's point, that like age is a little weird with electronic music. There's a little bit more, I
or
think.
with anything, to be honest. I mean, unless you're trying to be
Maybe,
a pop
but-
star,
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
don't
we're
think
not-
it's fucking irrelevant anymore.
We're
I don't
not-
think it's
we don't
relevant.
Have to be, we don't have to be models. We're not like marketed based off of how hip our looks are. You know what I mean? Like, we have the ability to throw down and rock with music on levels that are amazing. And I don't think there's any automatic bias we would be subject to for the kinds of things that we do. Whereas in some areas, maybe there would be.
Something to say would be, pick something where you have like you won't be judged for your age. I think that's a great avenue to take. I mean, if you want to be a model, or I mean, not you, but like if you want to be a model, there's a shelf life for that. If you pick something where it's more forgiving in terms of age, I think that's a great longer term plan.
That is
Yeah.
a great long-term plan, but also you have to realize too, like, this is something that I've realized is that people are just so fucking worried about themselves. Like, if you just are just so good at what you do and so passionate, you'll find a way to make it happen.
Sure.
And maybe that's just me being naive, but I've seen so many people who are really looked up to. Like, I've seen articles, if we're speaking on models, I've seen models that are 50-something years old, and that they're just so well respected because they are just so good at what they do, and they love it so much.
Well, I think that if I don't know who you're speaking about specifically, but seeing models transition into middle age, I think a lot of times what happens is, of course, they're beautiful. Like, they're beautiful, and they just have that like natural beauty. But a lot of times what happens is, I think they start to go into more of the business side of it. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not up there on the runway anymore doing what they used to do when they were in their 20s. Like, they they understand the business side, and maybe they have their own clothesline. They turn
They had a
adjust.
transition.
They
Yeah,
still
they
do what
transition,
they
yeah.
love,
Yeah.
but they adjust it.
they adapt.
Yeah.
you
And
know?
that's the point. Pick something where you always have options, right? Where age isn't going to be the sole gatekeeper of your success, or where one characteristic, whether it's age or something else, isn't the sole gatekeeper of your potential, right? Always have a plan to where you have movement to modify and
pivot,
morph
yeah.
with the situations that are going on around you.
That's good.
I think that buys you a lot of freedom, right?
Mhm.
Because as you get older, and this is definitely, I think, in evidence with my own decisions over my own life, with my own set of interests, situations change, right? And suddenly what might not have made sense a year before and you would have never envisioned might suddenly be presented as the greatest opportunity or direction you can go. And so you don't want to pigeonhole yourself any more than necessary, right? You want to do what you're passionate about, but you want to give yourself the largest amount of options possible so that you can make decisions.
Right. That's good advice.
Okay. Well, more questions. This one might be more specific just to you guys and your lifestyle, but how do you think that all the drugs you've done have affected you? Like, if you would have known something, would you have done something different, or just advice you would have given to?
Should I take this one first?
I don't know. You took the last few, so
Yeah, go for it.
I'll throw it out on the line this time.
Mm-hmm.
I would honestly say that they were a win. I think that maybe one of the better decisions I ever made in my life was to take a lot of the drugs that I did, because, and I say this not to necessarily say that everybody should, though I think there's an argument that they would be good for a lot of people. And I'm
Certain
talking, I think,
ones.
specifically about psychedelics in general.
Right.
But for myself, at the age in which I got involved with it, it really knocked down a lot of sort of social constructs that have been built around the way I saw things, whether it was from my upbringing or some of the schools I went to when I was young. And it really opened tons of doors, and it turned the whole world and different ideas into something that I could explore in a way that I never could before.
Right.
And so, and it opened doors artistically. It opened doors in friendships. The people that I knew that were doing those things tend to, even at a very early age, have relationships that were very deep. And I think in a lot of ways less surface than common friendships and stuff, because in those states of mind, you could sort of expose yourself on levels and remain comfortable that might not have normally happened. Like, I have friends that I've had since like high school, like in like good amounts of them that I'm still very, very close to. I have a very large circle of friends that all kind of were unified by a lot of those experiences. And I trust them all to death. I'm very fortunate in that sense. So I think the community and that was built around what I was doing, and the things that I chose to do on the whole were very positive. Now, there were a couple ripples in that where I did some things that were maybe not the right thing to do. But I luckily was able to see that and usually get rid of that, But on the whole, I think it was the best decision I ever made.
I am going to agree with most of that. I would say the same thing, that it opened up doors and created friendships and bonds. I mean, it's weird because the whole, like when I was living in Los Angeles, so much of the music scene, there were so many drugs. And I would say that some of the doors that were opened career-wise happened to be in situations with people who were heavy hitters who I ended up partying with. Without mentioning names, we almost opened up for a pretty big tour because, I made friends with a person who we shared a line of cocaine on my toilet seat at a party I had at my house. I mean, but that being said, all of the good things that have come from it as far as expanding my mind and just, the bonds that are broken down, I had a problem with moderation, and I went too far in a lot of situations. And drugs for me became, 3, 4, 5 times a week, and I went overboard quite a bit. I wouldn't take back any of the situations. I mean, I probably almost died a couple of times from, potential overdose. And I think that, besides just being too hard on myself physically with the amount that I did, I think when I look at, I don't have any regrets in my life, but one thing that I do wish that I had done differently if I had known, was to maybe party a little less and to focus on getting better at what I did a little more. I mean, I've always been good at what I did, but what was happening in my life was that as I was enjoying the fruits of success, the world continued to evolve, and I wasn't evolving with it because I was too busy paying attention to pleasurable things, having sex and doing drugs.
It just wasn't a good balance.
Exactly. And the world sort of passed me by a little bit. And so I've been playing catch up now for the last 5 years, trying to get back on, which I am. But if I had known better,
right.
And if I could go back in time and tell my younger self, not so much to not do it, but I wish I had practiced a little moderation and had focused a little bit more on just being better at what I did, But I agree with you a lot, Profi, on
in the
on your
theme of
point.
the show. I should point out in all of that, if I had known, and there are not many things that I would take back, but I think I could say, and it's very much related to this particular line of conversation. The one thing that I can't really say ever gave me anything good in the long run, that only gave me bad, that I could probably take back doing and have ended up at least as good or better in life, would have been doing any speed.
You didn't do that?
I did do it, and I did it luckily for not that long, but I probably spent a good solid year and then many years dabbling. But I restricted it luckily to a much smaller portion of my life than a lot of my friends did. But for myself, I don't think anything good ever came out of that drug.
Yeah.
I think that my body felt destroyed by that drug. I think that it spun me, and I don't think it helped me accomplish music. I think it ended up being some wasted time. It certainly made my last year in high school, which is around the time that I was doing it, much more challenging than it should have been. It was pretty much all bad. I mean, there were a couple moments, a couple great nights with friends, sure. But as a life, as a decision, I don't think that I would repeat that if knowing what I know now. There's nothing good in that drug, as far as I'm concerned.
So
that would be something I would do different.
So like after the first time and you realize it's not a good thing, like you realize it's not getting any better than this, I'm not gonna
Not
grow
after the
from
first
this.
time. No, it took me
a year later.
It took me longer
A year
to
later.
realize
No,
that.
so but like the
It wasn't
advice
a
that
year,
you would give
but-
yourself, like when you do realize, like, or if you can realize and take account of, hey, this isn't really adding to my life, get rid of it.
I realized well before I stopped, I think. But that particular drug is a little bit insidious because it lasts so long and it affects your sleeping and eating patterns so much.
And it also
that
gives
once-
you a sense of well-being that's like fake. It's a fake
But-
sense of well-being too.
It does. But from the physical part, the sleeping and the eating part, what I found was that if you get into a cycle where you're doing it, you have to keep doing it to even make it to your work or your school or whatever you're doing. So it almost creates a situation where it's very difficult to stop in certain ways.
You
Yeah.
depend on
And
it.
so it's very easy to get lost in a cycle. So even if you think, God, I'd rather not be wasted right now, but in an hour I've got to go to school or work instead of sleep off the fact that I've been up for 2 days straight.
Adderall's become very much like
it's-
that for a lot of people.
It's a lot milder, but yeah, it's the same crutch. Luckily, it's milder, but I don't know. I hear kids are eating a lot of it, so I can't judge. But
Yeah.
I don't think in the long term it was the best decision. Do I regret these things? It's not regret because I think I learned from all of them. But if I were to make a different decision, I don't think my life would be any worse off if I had just skipped that one
Cool.
completely.
Cool. My next question is, you guys are both married, if I'm correct. If
Yeah.
I know you guys.
It's amazing, isn't it,
I
that
know, it's
anybody would actually
strange.
marry us?
Yeah, right. How did you guys meet your spouse, and how did you know that that's who you wanted to be married to and assume that you'll spend the rest of your life with if that's how you view your relationship?
Why don't you go first?
Oh, I got 2 in a row. Let's see. It's kind of interesting. I met my wife Kathy online, but it wasn't really an online relationship or anything like that, which is common where you meet people and you talk to them for a long time and it's kind of virtual and then maybe you eventually hang out with them. I remember meeting her online and then immediately asking her out. And so it pretty much transitioned off of line very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were together for a while, you know, before we got married. How did I know she was the right one? I mean, you know, I think that for me, you know, it's very easy or popular to say, oh, we were in love and this and that. And of course, you know, we are. But I think for me, marriage is something that has to be a lot more than just that, because I've been in love, you know, and you can be in love with a lot of people who are horrible for you. But when you're married, if the intention is to stay with them forever, there are certain things that need to be in place to where you can sustain that kind of a relationship. And I
And
think
a life. It's
Right,
not
so
even
what
just
would those things be?
it's a practical
Briefly.
thing on a lot of ways. Well, briefly, well, I think for her and I, she has qualities that just counterbalance my more erratic qualities, right? I mean, I am an artist. I'm a little crazy. You know, I've done a lot of weird things and am probably more prone to that than your average human being. But to have a home that can last a long time, at least for me, I needed somebody who would be maybe not part of any of the circle of people I've always hung out with, because I still want to have that. But I need that anchoring point that's not that, right? And she's very
someone
much
who allows
not
you to
that.
still be that too, because sometimes you get with someone who is the opposite of you, who will not allow you to be.
Yeah, they'll put you in their
yeah,
box.
they'll put you in their box.
So my wife, one thing that I really appreciate about her is that she's nothing like me in a lot of those ways, like, you know, the art or the drugs or any of that stuff that's been part of my life. But she doesn't tell me who I can be friends with. She doesn't try to keep me from working on music. She doesn't try to control, exactly to Scott's point, a lot of those key sorts of things that I have to have in my life. But the fact that she's not totally part of them makes her a sort of anchor point for my own stability and keeping my decisions sane and realizing that the things I do impact more people than me, and like it grounds me. And so I think that her ability to be so much not those things, but so able to let me be me at the same time, and the balance of those two things, the way it worked out with us, is probably one of the bigger things that I thought was important. I think the other would be, you know, when you're getting married, you know, if you have potentially, if you just potentially have children or something like that, you know, that would come into play with something like marriage. And I think she would be an incredible mother. So I think that's important as a quality. She would be an incredible mother. So she anchors me. She could do an amazing job at helping raise children if we have them. And I think those are probably a couple qualities that that, and the fact that she's fairly low drama, like our personalities are such, like, you know,
They mesh well.
Yeah, you know, we have fights and things can get the way they do when anybody's together, but generally speaking, she's fairly low drama, which is nice for me because I have enough other stresses in life. So I think kind of a mix of all those things. I just, you know, there was a point where I knew, like, she's a type of person who wanted to be married and wanted to have those things, and I knew that that was always going to have to be in the cards if it went past a certain point.
And you had a
Right.
long history of picking the drama chicks, which were
Yeah,
fun, but
I
not,
always did.
Yeah.
They were, and it always ended up hell. So it was just like, you know, these qualities are the kinds of qualities that would be the qualities I want in a marriage, right?
Right.
And so
but you have
that's
to have
the
those. You
direction I
have to
went.
experience the opposite side before you can appreciate the low drama. Because I think what happens in a lot of marriages is that people settle right away for someone who's safe. And then later on in life, end up their mind wanders. They're like, "Oh, I never got to do this, and now I want to fuck the pool boy." Like I think that you,
pool boy.
I think that you have to. I think you have to fuck up and do some of the crazy things so that you can appreciate the lack of drama and problems that come from situations like that with dangerous,
So
toxic.
at
That's
what
totally
point,
true.
At what
That's totally
point
true.
did you guys realize that you were done with that extreme of it and wanted to be where you are with the person?
Well, it's not done as much. To me, I've never been somebody who gives things up. I just don't happen to do drugs the way I did before. I just don't happen to do a lot of stuff because they're not conducive to the things I'm wanting to succeed in life. So they're not like hard lines,
Okay,
right?
that's a good,
But
sweet answer.
but I think for me, and I think this touches on what Scott was just saying. The benefit for me is the way I lived my life was pretty hard and pretty on the edge with the music, with the sex and drugs and all these kinds of things. I liked pushing that line. I liked just throwing my head, my psychology, my body, my whatever into all of these extremes and experiencing them. And at this point in my life, I have experienced them. It's not like, some cheap sex or a line of coke's going to make me want to change my life suddenly because I've been so sheltered that it's like has this unbelievable allure, right?
I'm
not going to
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to be seriously tempted by all sorts of crazy stuff that would throw
people's
my
priorities
life into
change
craziness.
too. Like the things
Yeah.
the things I wanted in the past. Like it was like the other night, like for my birthday party. Like I didn't really drink that much. It's like I want to feel good tomorrow. I got shit to do. I'm going to LA. I'm working on this album. Like my goals, the things that make me feel good, the highs that I get now come from succeeding more than they do from getting shit faced. And that is such a huge difference for me, is that before I had such a hard time saying no to a pill or coke or any of that stuff because I wanted to feel good in that moment. And now I'm playing the long game because the long game success to me feels like a fucking huge triumph over a short-term high that I can have in that moment that's going to make me feel shitty the next day.
So how could you turn that into advice for someone my age? Like focusing on...
Make conscious decisions.
I still think, Cody, that okay, maybe this is really counterintuitive, but I really sort of stand behind this. You have to make some mistakes. You have to feel pain from certain situations. Advice from someone who's been there, although I think that it's wonderful. I didn't have that myself. I didn't have an older brother or a friend who had been through it, or parents that really helped me at all. I really stumbled around quite a bit because I just didn't have anybody to help me. And I'm glad now in retrospect, but there was a lot of hell that helped me to appreciate where I am and what I have now. And if I didn't have that pain, I'm not saying go out and do a bunch of shitty things, but
Take risks.
But you have to to at least take risks, live a little. A little pain is you're never gonna know.
That's how we
It
grow.
creates contrast. It creates contrast, and I.
When you open this thing up, sorry.
No. I'm trying. I don't want to say go out and do speed and don't do. Obviously, set your own boundaries, but you're gonna have some bad relationships. You might get drunk and throw up a couple times. You might do some of these things, but you don't know what you don't want to be until you are that person that you don't want to be eventually. Like you have to be who you don't want to be so you know what you want to be.
Not even you don't have to be, but you can know. You can have there are things that my parents have done and that I'm I don't want to be that, you don't personally need to be it, but you need to at least understand.
But
you gotta live some of these whatever these means, but you gotta live some experiences. Like when you opened up the segment, almost one thing was that struck me immediately, and I think this is touching on what Scott was just saying a bit too. It was kind of what's the advice to not make the mistakes as I go forward or something like that. I don't remember how you phrased it, but the first thing that came to mind was that that's the totally wrong thing, because you only gain wisdom from making mistakes. So you can take advice to try to navigate life and avoid maybe the ones that the penalty is too great with, that might really hurt you.
Like, don't do
But
heroin. You know,
you got
like,
maybe if
Like,
you're
you can
about
skip
to put a
some.
needle in your
skip
arm.
heroin.
Yeah, maybe if you're about to put a needle in your arm, you should just think to yourself, this is probably too far. I shouldn't be here right now, right? But like in general, you have to push boundaries. You have to live a little, because you need to know where your own walls are to really understand yourself. You need to know what your own understanding of pleasure and pain and success and dreams and all these things are. And if you never play with that a little, you don't really understand it natively. And I think you have to be willing to make mistakes and try your best to learn from them, right? So that you can turn your life into larger levels of success through those mistakes. Right?
I always say that
you have to internalize.
There's no
things
textbook on
through
life.
experience.
There's no textbook on how to do things the right way. The only true wisdom that any of us have is knowing what you don't want to do again. That's, I mean, you know?
Yeah. Wisdom is what you want, and wisdom comes through experience. And experience means making decisions that might not always be the best.
Yeah. Failure's
But
not
at
a
least
bad thing.
at least taking a step in a direction to figure something out.
You got to
Yeah,
take risks.
You got to take steps. If you,
You gotta
don't move, you're
be
not moving
moved.
But
forward.
Yeah.
but take calculated risks. You're not stupid. You know, like I made stupid decisions. I was never stupid, but I made stupid decisions because I was just behind socially because of the way that I was raised. And now, I mean, even at 42, I guess 43. Jeez, I
43.
just turned 43.
Yay, happy birthday.
I still take risks. Like you've got to be willing. You got to be willing to take risks and not so much lose it all. Although maybe sometimes that might be the situation. But if you don't take risks, I will say that anyone who ever would have regrets would be the person who didn't take the risks. If you play it safe all the time, you'll never know. You'll never know. And the minute you stop taking risks, I think, is when you stop living. Like shit just dries up. You might as well just die at that point, because who knows what could happen if you just did that one thing that you were afraid to do. I mean,
You got to challenge yourself
Yeah.
to move ahead, right? You got to push
It's
forward.
so cliche to say. Coming out of my mouth, it sounds like a motivational speaker, but but I mean, I'm still living it at 43. I'm still have the dream of fucking this next thing that I'm gonna do. That's just gonna fucking be the thing. And I don't own a house. I really don't have much in my life in terms of what a person who the average person has at this age. Has a house, maybe two houses, maybe a 401k. Like, I have none of that. I have nothing to fall back on except for the fact that I believe in what I do, and that's really scary for someone who's my age. But there's no way I could do it any other way, because
Right.
I'm not going to turn 80 years old and wonder what would have happened if I'd tried. Because I see like I was talking about my friend Cell Dweller, who has done it in this and like between 40 and 50. I'm like, fuck it. If he can do it, I can do it. So, I mean, I have like sort of role models. Profile your camera. And that's what drives me.
Yeah.
Is that, like, I know that it's possible still,
Yeah.
So, but I've made a lot of mistakes. And I think that, although most of my regrets are from the relationships that I trampled along the way. That, I would say, is to be as kind and compassionate to people as possible, because those are the things you can't take back.
Right.
That's where most of my regrets would come from, is how I treated people because I was being selfish. So
Right. Care, be compassionate to people, whatnot.
that's always, like, I think that no matter what choices you make, whether you're going to do drugs or you're going to try to be an astronaut or whatever, I think that one thing that I can say for certain is that the most important thing in your life are the relationships that you make and the people that you like, the stellar people who not only care about you, who take care of you and nurture you. If you don't make them a priority, you will always regret that.
Yeah, quality friends and relationships are worth like putting time into.
That to me that's sage wisdom right there. Like keep those people close to you that you love.
Right.
And treat them with kindness and compassion, pretty much how you'd want to be treated. That I didn't do, and I would change that if I could go back.
That's good. That's good to know.
What do you think about that profile, right? Friendship, relationships. I mean, there's
Yeah.
I don't think that there's anything more important than the people that you connect with. Just being giving as much as you take. And I took more than I gave, and that's what I would take back if I could change things mostly, you know?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes too, I think a lot of the craziness, you find out who those true friends are too. I mean, I'll do all the craziness and strange crap that maybe I could take back in life. The people who still remain are the ones that count.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And even at my age, like I can still go back and look on things like things I wish I would have known a little bit earlier in my life. One thing is just the direct effect that the people that you surround yourself with have on you and how that reflects you and makes you act as a person. Like, for example, I wish I would have known that the friends and the family, like you can, if they're not adding benefit to your life, it's okay to cut them off.
Oh, absolutely.
It's okay. Yeah, it's like take care of the people that you love, but also if there are people who are draining you and are not adding any value to your life, it's okay to cut them off and not feel bad about it.
That includes family, by the way,
That
like
it
biological
does include family.
Like
If they injure you, if they're bad for you.
Blood is not thicker than water. Like I don't know. I know that is a very popular saying. It actually originates from a German proverb, but it's just not true. Like I've had pets treat me better than certain biological family members, and I luckily have always at a certain point in my life I cut it all off and I fucking walked away, and I am super grateful for that because the people that I have in my life now are my family.
Yeah.
Like I've never
You
known
create your family.
Yeah. And those are the and not only that, even just in the last year, I got off Facebook. I cut out pretty much anyone in my life who wasn't fucking essential. And it's been the best thing that ever happened. So absolutely. Fucking remove tumors from your life. Remove those people. It's not if they're not adding benefit to your life. I'm not saying that like everyone has to be like some obviously
You don't have to
everyone
get something. Like,
there are there's acquaintances and there are friendships. But if they're energy vampires, fucking just move away. Walk away.
There are definitely people that I've probably allowed to be close to me for too long. You know, I think I've usually been a bit sentimental and tried to have faith in a lot of people. And for the most part, I've been very fortunate, and that faith has been the right thing. But there have been a couple occasions where I knew better, and I just was never decisive about it. And by the time that I finally got around to breaking off that relationship, it was probably the best thing I could have ever done. So it's good to identify those toxic influences, whether they're friends or family or whoever. There's definitely a certain point where it's smart to protect yourself and to give yourself the space to live happily.
Well, you do become like the people you hang around. I really do think that that's a thing.
Absolutely.
That is to some degree, absolutely, yeah, because that's what you're around. I mean, the decisions that are presented to you are the ones framed by your environment.
Right. That's
And I guess the last one I'm going to end on is that the biggest limitations that I've imposed them upon myself. Like those are the biggest obstacles, or the ones that I've put on myself. Like there was a time before I made this big move across the country, I didn't ever think I would leave the house. Like I was fucking scared. I would calculate how many minutes away any plan I had would be away from my house and get anxious about it and be like, oh my God, that's 20 minutes away. It'll take me 20 minutes to get home if I don't feel well there. It was just a weird anxiety thing. And I'm like, I'm never going to be able to fucking leave this town. And I imposed that limit upon myself, and now I'm living across the country, like somewhere I fucking love.
Right.
And it just goes to show, like, I wish I would have known that a little sooner, that I'm putting these restrictions on myself. And you can look in any other aspect of your life, like where are you putting those limitations on yourself, and how can you break through them?
I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the prospect of moving to Los Angeles was absolutely fucking terrifying to me. I mean, to think about living in a city like that when I was young, I mean, I didn't want to go. I'm like, can't we move to Denver? Can't we like go somewhere just a little bit, just a little closer? That's just a little bit bigger.
In a comfort zone, yeah, it's a comfort zone.
Jason wouldn't. My partner, he was like, no, we're gonna go to Los Angeles. He's like, there's no point in there's no point in a stepping stone. Just go and do it. And it was horrifying and horrible and lonely and scary and a huge cultural difference. But after a year, I eased right into it, and life got better, and I changed, and everything, and you did the same thing. You just got to jump in sometimes.
You just got to fucking do it.
And actually, there were a lot of people that moved from Albuquerque afterwards that ended up moving back. You know what? You got to give yourself a year. You've got to just get in there. You've got to like immerse yourself in the experience. And if you're, I will say this: there are different kinds of people in the world. There are people who are destined to succeed, who have courage, who have the wherewithal, who have intellect, who are socially adept to certain situations, like. And then there's certain people who are meant for small town life, and that's okay. Either of those options are okay if they make you happy. But if you want to succeed, you put yourself where things are happening. You get out there, be bold.
You got to keep
and
moving.
you are a bold person. Like you go do comedy. You met us and you do this podcast. You've obviously done that, but keep doing that because that's how things happen.
Keep moving.
Keep moving.
Don't be stagnant.
Don't let fear keep you from doing stuff. I mean, I can definitely tell you that I'm sure that there are old people in their on their deathbed who their regret was, I wish I hadn't been afraid to try. I wish I would have tried. I wish I would have known what it was like just to try. Don't be that guy.
Yeah, I think that's been one of my biggest problems. There's been lots of things in life, I think, that I've wanted to do that I would have done better if I'd been less apprehensive or less needing to set everything up perfectly so I felt secure about the decision. In most cases, I think I ultimately went in the right direction, but I think I wasted a lot of time on some of those paths.
Deliberating, maybe?
I think I like to think of it as deliberating when it was happening, but I think I was just fucking scared.
Yeah. And
really.
It's like you
out of my
put
comfort
that on
level,
yourself.
you know? Yeah, and you really do waste a lot of time in that. You can get caught in a lot of loops because of fear, that you can lose opportunities because of it, because sometimes in life you have to be ready to do the thing right then and there. And if you wait and waffle and second guess yourself, that opportunity vanishes.
Oh yeah. You have to learn to trust your instincts.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that's pretty sound advice. And I'll say this, and I know we need to close here soon. When I was in my band Deep Sky, my partner was very big on He was very calculated, very astute, but very calculated, and really wanted to. Every situation that presented itself always had to be a conversation, a deliberation, and we lost a lot of opportunities sometimes because we were pivoting too much on like what could happen with this. And one of the reasons why he hated me was because I would act without his consent. I would go with my instinct, which led to many doors opening for us. And there's something to be said for acting on instinct. That being said, when you're in a partnership, you need to, you have to take the other person into consideration. But I think that learning to trust your instinct is a huge component to succeeding.
Right.
And sometimes you've just got to move. You've just got to make a move. And it may or may not work out. But I think that more often than not, that collective unconscious thing we're talking about, that instinct comes from that pool of data out there that is the difference between successful and unsuccessful people. And sometimes you've just got to trust what that is. And I call it instinct. So, but that's it.
Yeah. It's good to trust your gut. Be smart, use the wisdom that you've gained through making different decisions and having different experiences as a guide so that you don't, trust your gut into a fiery pit. But because you can do that too. But I agree with Scott, and I think this is something he's particularly good at. You do have to trust your gut. You have to, if you have a strong feeling that something's the way to go, you have to be willing to try. And because a lot of times I think there is something more than your normal straight consciousness that's trying to tell you something.
Yeah, that can be boiled down from data. You know, there's just a feeling, and I don't know what that is, but it works.
Just a knowing.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Those are all. If I had known.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm glad that I'm hearing all this advice now and these experiences and whatnot. It's just nice.
Good. Awesome.
Well, we'll end on that then, and thanks for everyone being here tonight. And this is a good one. I actually enjoyed this one a lot. So I guess we'll see you all next time. I go to California for a couple of weeks, so we won't be here for a couple of weeks, but we'll see you again soon.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Later.
Bye.